Hi, this is Richard Vague with Tychos, and this week we're going to take a quick look at Brexit. A recent headline lamented that the UK's GDP growth had flatlined, so we thought we'd take a moment to take a quick peek at what's going on, and we'd do that by comparing the Western Big Four, if you will, which is the US, Germany, France, and the UK. When we do that, we see that the UK's GDP growth has truly flatlined. But why? Is the problem Brexit? Is it the effects of the pandemic? Is it inflation? Is it all three? Historical irony is that Brexit came into full effect at almost exactly the same time as COVID hit the world. So parsing out the effects of one versus the other will forever be impossible. But we can at least see what the relative performance of the UK has been. But first, we can confirm that yes, British GDP has flatlined, at least for the moment. But so have the GDPs of France and Germany, and by almost as much. All three look a little pale compared to the US. And growth in total stock market capitalization in Britain has significantly lagged both the US and France. So what's the issue as regards the UK in particular? It's not the Brexit impact on trade. In fact, Britain has held its own on net imports on that count. More in a moment. Instead, at least at one level, the answer is pretty simple. The GDP growth of the UK, France, and Germany have all lagged the US because total debt growth in the US has been much more robust, and GDP growth is simply a function of the total growth in debt for spending in each country. Here we see that the total debt growth in the UK, France, and Germany is well behind the debt growth of the US. For the UK, we can see that this is especially true for the private debt component of that debt growth. Either British lenders are more reluctant to lend, or borrowers are more reluctant to borrow, or both. But in the UK, the issue is a private sector lending issue, which impacts things like gross fixed capital formation that have, as a result, also lagged. As an aside, the strength in US debt growth is from largely government spending, much of which does in fact boost GDP. I guess we can thank Joan Manchin for relenting on the historical spending bills in 2022. So the question is this: why would UK private sector lenders and borrowers lag so much? It will take time to parse that question out, but a possibility is the uncertainty and disruption brought by Brexit. Britain is having to rewire a great deal of its economy. That disruption would be a plenty good reason for borrowers and lenders to be more cautious. Let's look quickly at two more things: inflation and exchange rates. On CPI, you can see that the UK is doing the worst of all, though not by much, and France the best. Though the producer price index, the wholesale price trends underlying CPI, has improved markedly for all four countries, and we would expect it to continue to improve through time. That leaves exchange rates, and that is where we see one of the biggest differences of all of the UK versus the other three. Ever since the lead up to the Brexit vote, and accelerating after that epical vote, the pound has plunged versus the dollar, the euro, and the RMB, and has yet to recover. That has to be putting at least an extra modicum of pressure on UK inflation, since it disadvantages their exports and makes imports more expensive. And that would create an extra measure of uncertainty that might also be making lenders and borrowers somewhat more cautious. Now, while we are on the subject, here's a big dose of Brexit irony for you. Trade, imports, and exports is up for both imports and exports for the UK, France, and Germany as compared to the period before the Brexit vote and also before the implementation of Brexit in January of 2020. So much for Brexit tanking trade, at least for the moment. So I would not be surprised to see British lending remain subdued as Brexit sorts itself out and as the pound tries to overcome some of its disadvantage. Britain and the other European countries also face the uncertainties that come with the Ukraine war somewhat more directly than the U.S. Whatever the cause, for the UK's sake, we hope their private sector lending strengthens sooner rather than later. That's it for this week. Thanks.